friends, it's Jessie here. Welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you are new here. In today's video, we're going to be doing something a little bit different. I wanted to sit down and talk to you guys a little bit about my kids and what I am trying to instill in them and what I'm trying to teach them about budgeting. We're mostly going to talk in regards to my oldest son today. For those of you who do not know, my oldest son's name is Robert. He's 18 years old, and I've really been trying to focus a lot over the last couple of years of teaching him the value of money, how to budget, what's most important in terms of finances, and it's something that I get questions about sometimes and something I wanted to talk to you guys about today. So my son has been working off and on in some shape or form since he was 15 or 16 years old. He did a lot of like cutting grass, taking odd jobs to earn cash. He would earn money from my husband and I for basic things around the house, and he has 100% always been a spender. Like every single nickel or dime he would get into his hand, he would immediately want to go out and spend it. My youngest son, who is 13, his name is Austin, is quite the opposite. He's very much a saver. So if he gets money for his Christmas gift, he earns it for his allowance, any kind of cash that he would get his hands on, he would save it up for long periods of time and really be thoughtful about how he was going to spend his money. And so when it comes to teaching my kids about finances, I have two very different personality types. Even so, the lessons that I try to teach my kids and instill in my kids are very much the same. Now, I am not a budget expert. I have a little disclaimer. If you've never checked out my description box of my videos, I have a little disclaimer in there that says point blank, like, I'm not a financial expert. I'm just, plain person trying to get by every single day. And I just sit down with you guys and film these videos from a motivation standpoint, from a both keeping myself motivated and trying to motivate you guys to be aware of your finances and write out a budget, that sort of thing. I'm not an expert, but I have some basic principles that I'm trying to teach my kids. When I was growing up, I never really talked to my parents about money. We were, pretty poor when I was growing up. Kind of looking back on it now, I can see that. But at the time growing up, I didn't really know because we didn't talk about money. We didn't talk about bills or finances or savings or credit cards or anything like that. Everything that I have learned about budgeting, I've pretty much taught myself over the years. I didn't get my first credit card until I was in my 30s. Before that, my husband and I paid for everything in cash. We lived paycheck to paycheck. And I just kind of thought that's how it was until I sort of discovered the budgeting community on YouTube and taught myself some things. And now I'm trying to make it easier for my kids to know, the best principles and things that I can teach them so that they don't have to figure it out on their own after getting themselves into credit card debt or, finding themselves at 35 or 40 with no retirement plan, that sort of thing. I don't want them to struggle the way that I have. I have found a love for budgeting, but it has been a struggle. So, basic principles that I've always tried to teach my children: work hard, don't ever expect anything to be handed to you, and make sure you're focusing on savings. And when it comes to my son, Robert, my 18-year-old, that's always been a struggle. Like I said, he's the type of person who just wants to spend all his money. And when he's, cutting grass and he's making 15 bucks here, 20 bucks there, and he's 15 and in school, that's not such a big deal. But now, as an adult, he's got his first official, like, full-time big boy job. It's really important to me that he knows the value of money and he's focusing on savings and not just spending every dime he has. So we set him up a little bit of a budget that I'm going to share with you today. But the very first thing that we did was sit down and talk about what was important to him. I could sit here and write out a budget and tell him exactly where to send every single dime that he makes, but that's not going to be valuable for him. That's going to be, my mom does my budget. I really wanted to know what was important to him. I wanted to hear about what his long-term goals were. And so we sat down and had a bit of a meeting. The very first thing he said to me was, I work hard for my money. I want to be able to spend it. I don't want to save all my money. And, you know, he was very adamant that he wanted to have plenty of spending money and he wanted his budget process to be simple. He sees me sit down every single week, write out my budget. It takes a while. I'm balancing numbers. I'm calculating things. He doesn't want to put that much time and effort into it. He's more like my husband, I think, where my husband's very hands-off with the budget. I really like to get into the nitty-gritty of the numbers. My son wanted everything to be simple. So, as I mentioned, my oldest son is a spender, not a saver. If left to his own devices, he would take every single dime he owns after he took care of his bills, and he would spend it. That's just the type of personality that he has. And so it was really important that he have a budget and he had an overarching plan to stick to so that he wasn't spending every single dime he brought in. Now, my son is in a very unique position in that he is making adult money. You know, he has a regular income that comes in every week. He works really hard. And he's making decent money, but he doesn't have very many responsibilities. So what I always say is that he's got big boy money with little boy responsibilities. And that's a pretty bad combination for a spender because, you know, he's going to take care of all of his bills, which he could pretty much wipe out with one paycheck, and the rest of the income he brings in, he's just going to spend. I had to put the kibosh on that really quick. So we sat down, we had a budget meeting. We talked about what were his long-term goals financially, what was important to him, what he wanted his budget to do for him. And then we set up a system that I would like to share with you. So let's go ahead and do that. So my son has very few responsibilities. The things that he absolutely has to pay for every single month are rent, and we charge him to live here because he does live with us full time, but it's a very small amount. We're charging him $200 a month total, and that is for his rent as well as his phone bill. So $200 a month, and we actually take a portion of this and we put it into an envelope for him that we are saving for him for his future. He does not know that. So a portion of this we save for him. So we're not just taking $200 and adding it to our budget every single month, but that's what he is taking out of his budget every month is $200 that takes care of his rent and his phone bill. My family and I use Boost Mobile. We are on a family plan, and his portion of that is $35. So $35 of this technically goes to his phone bill. A portion of it goes to his savings, and then whatever's left we just throw essentially into our grocery budget. It really just helps us keep him fed because that kid can eat. So $200 there. The other major expense he has is his car insurance, which is somewhere in the neighborhood of $175 a month. And then he has a couple of subscription services that come out of his paycheck, or I'm sorry, out of his bank account every month. They're like streaming subscriptions for anime or something. I don't really know. He handles that. And that comes out to like $20 a month, if that. So, you know, this is all that he has to pay. These are all of his like responsibilities every month. So adding that up, that's $395. So conceivably, he could take $100 out of every single paycheck, put it away, and he could spend the rest if that's what he wanted to do. But of course, I tell him how important it is to save. We talked about the merits of an emergency fund. You know, maybe he's going to need to buy a new car someday. He's going to want to have money set aside for big purchases. He doesn't just want to take every single dime he has and spend it on, you know, gas station Cheetos and movie tickets and concerts and that sort of thing. So we talked about pulling a certain amount of money out of his paycheck every single week for savings, whether it be $200 or $300. But nailing down an exact amount to pull out of his paycheck every week is difficult because, much like my husband, my son's paid based on commission, so his paychecks fluctuate every week. They're not the same. So he might decide that he wants to pull out $300 for savings, but then maybe his check is only going to be $300 that week, and then he's got no money for gas or spending or anything like that. So we came up with a system of percentages, and I basically let him decide what he wanted to do in terms of that. And the decision that he made originally was, I'm going to take 50% and I'm going to put it into spending, and I'm going to take 50% and I'm going to put it into savings. Well, I started talking to him a little bit about the importance of, you know, long-term savings, emergency fund. If you're taking 50% of your money and you're just spending it, you're not going to meet your goals as quickly. And I kind of broke it down for him. I took the basic cost of a used car and showed him, you know, I took his paycheck that week as the example. It was this much money. I divided it in half and I told him, okay, so this is how much you're putting into savings. If you were saving for a car, for example, this is how long it would take you to save up for a new car. And he was shocked at how long it would take him to meet his goals if he was only putting away 50% of his income. So what he finally decided on was 25% would be for spending and 75% would be for bills and savings. I tried to talk him into some other things. This is what he decided he wanted to do. It was really important to me to let him take the reins with this and let him make his own decisions, because I could sit down and work out a budget for him and hand him a piece of paper and say, this is what you need to do with your money. But that doesn't give him any ownership of any decisions, and it doesn't teach him responsibility. It just teaches him do what mom said to do. And I really wanted him to be the leader when it came to his money. I gave him a lot of suggestions. I tried to convince him of this or that or the other and really put value in long-term savings and be thinking about where you're going to be in 10 years, 15 years, and where you want your money to go and that sort of thing. But this is what he decided. And realistically, if it were me, I would want to spend a little bit less, save a little bit more, especially when he's in a scenario where he doesn't have a lot of responsibilities. His dad and I are taking care of him financially in a lot of ways, and he's really in a unique position right now to save a lot of money. But I also understand that he's 18 years old, and there's probably never going to be a time in his life when he can spend as freely as he does right now, so might as well let him enjoy it. So this is what he decided on. 25% goes to spending. This is for anything he wants to spend it on, plus gas. So he puts gas into his car, he can, you know, go with his friends to a movie, he can buy himself a snack, he can take himself to dinner, whatever he wants, but this is his gas and spending. And depending on how much money he earns that week, it might be a lot, it might be a little bit. So that's that. And then 75% of what he earns goes to bills and savings. Now I can tell you guys with certainty that he earns enough money to cover his bills and still have savings every month. He's not paid a specific amount every month. He's not like paid hourly or paid a salary, but he is working enough to pay all of his bills and then some. So 75% comes out for bills and savings. So every single week, he takes the 75% out in cash. And actually, he takes it all out in cash. He does leave a little bit of money in his buffer. So if, for example, his paycheck is $427, and I just pulled that number out of thin air, that's not representative of what he earns. It's just easy math, right? He would probably pull out $400 in cash, and he would leave that $27 in as a buffer. He would just round it down to the nearest 100 or the nearest 50, depending on how much it was. You know, if it was $497, he wouldn't take it down to $400. He'd probably take it down to $450 and leave the rest in as a buffer. That's up to him to decide, but he would pull the rest in cash, and then he would split it up. 25% of the cash would go into his wallet for his gas and spending. The other 75% would get divvied up in here. This probably looks familiar to you if you are a regular watcher of mine and you've seen my budget. And the way that I handle my sinking funds, I use a little accordion folder like this. I actually originally found this little system for him, and I liked it so much I bought it for myself. The reason why I chose something like this for him is because he wanted everything to be simple. You guys know when I do my sinking funds, I separate everything out into like 11 or 12 different categories. I have everything color coded. I have, you know, lots of different categories and things that I break things down into. And he wanted nothing to do with a super long process. He wanted everything to be simple, straightforward, and easy. So we broke his 75% up into 3 categories. We have his bills category, where we pull out cash for him to be able to pay his bills every single month. We take $100 from the 75% of his paycheck that he has chosen to use for bills and savings. We put it into a bills envelope, and that more than covers all of his responsibilities for the month. The rest of that 75% goes into one of 2 categories, either savings, which are essentially his sinking funds, only he doesn't separate everything out into 500 different categories. He just has one big savings, and then the other category that he has is his emergency fund. We haven't decided whether he's going to save $500 or $1,000 for his emergency fund. Right now he has $500 in there. I don't know, I'm still going back and forth. I think it's important for him to have an emergency fund. The savings, he can kind of spend more freely. Like, he can decide what falls under the categories of savings versus what falls under the category of his spending money every week. He's pretty loosey-goosey with that. But the emergency fund he doesn't touch, with the exception of an emergency. So I'm leaning more towards him saving $1,000 for his emergency fund, but ultimately, again, that decision will be his. So let's just take this example that I used here with, you know, $400 that he's working with for his percentages. So obviously 25% of 400 is $100. So he would put $100 into his wallet. That'll fill up his gas tank, and he can spend that on whatever he wants. Again, I would typically encourage him to spend less than $100 a week, but he's at an age right now where he can afford to do it. Might as well live it up because the larger responsibilities are coming. And then that would leave him $300 for his bills and savings. So of that $300, we know that $100 is going to go towards his bills envelope, and then the other $200 he can split up between his emergency fund and his savings. So in this case, he would probably stick $100 in his emergency fund and $100 into his general savings. And then when it comes to his spending money, you know, he's going to stick $30 in his gas tank, and the rest he's going to spend throughout the week, whether it be to get himself lunch while he's at work or to meet up with his friends and go do something, whatever it is. So that's basically how he does his budget. And again, he's building up a buffer every week with the extra money when he rounds his income down. And it's been working out really great when his bills are coming due. For example, when his car insurance is due around the 23rd, he knows that he needs to go into his envelope and pull out the money. I do keep track of it for him. He asked that I do that, and I don't mind doing it. He's capable, but I have better handwriting, and I'm the one who likes to sit here and work with the numbers and everything, but he makes all the decisions with the money. So that's essentially how we do his budget and what I'm trying to teach my kids about money. I know that it's not a perfect system. There's definitely plenty of ways that he could improve his system, but at 18 years old, living with his mom, the fact that he is thinking about budgeting at all and that it's important to him to, you know, make the decision to save for things instead of just blowing all his money is really, really good, and I'm excited about that. Now, when my youngest son gets to the point where he's working full-time and he's making money, I think that it's going to be a different scenario because he's very much a saver and not a spender. But the fact that he's already thinking about his future, what he can do with money. Right now, he's 13 years old. He's already saving for driver's training so that he can, you know, get his license when he's 16 and get a job. So talking about money as a family, talking about our long-term goals, that's always been something that's really important to us. My kids know that I have credit card debt and that it's really important to me that they not get into credit card debt. My oldest son does have a credit card that he can use for emergencies if he needs to. We made him an authorized user on one of our credit cards that is paid off, and he has that with him in case, you know, his car breaks down when he's out and about or something and he needs access to money. He doesn't take his debit card with him. He's got it locked up. He uses his cash, and that's how he has chosen to do it because he knows that when he's swiping his debit card, he doesn't pay close enough attention to what he's spending. He's already learning tips and tricks and ways to manage his money, and that makes me so happy. So even if his budget isn't perfect, and even if he's not, you know, investing and thinking about where he's going to be when he's 60, he's still managing his money, and I'm so proud of him, and that all of the things I've been trying to teach him are starting to stick. So that is it for today's video. I know it was a little bit different, but I've gotten some questions about Robert's budget, and so I thought it would be a good time to share it with you and talk a little bit about you know, how we teach our kids to deal with money. So I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a big thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe. I post new budgeting and lifestyle content here on my channel every single week. I'll see you in my next one. Bye, friends!